And then we'll say, okay, Nicole, and then they'll say, same what? And then we'll share. Who would like to share? Yeah. Let's see. Like, I wrote a little script last night.
Cello player. There's a cello player getting
Who's
stuff.
playing it?
I don't know.
Somebody from.
And here's Allie. Allie's checking everybody out. She's okay. She's all right. You've met me before.
Mm-hmm. We don't pronounce
thank you.
We actually have programs.
I will be in charge of programs. I love
I'm going to. Is this chair for the speakers? Thank you.
I'm in charge of program. Oh, thank you.
We have like we say.
There's a cello player, but they turned him down. And people come in. I just saw Annie Stevens.
Yeah, I heard she and Barbara were going. And who's that? Who's that person in front of her? Looks like I'll give it to you. No, I'll get one.
Allie's being good.
That's Marie.
So good. And she went, took a little rest and heard the music. I got to listen to music at home. She read.
Yeah.
Here,
We'll just let it die recently.
Thank you.
Mind this I do. Oh,
it
could be, Rosie. Well, she was.
And then he just had a little
Please be seated. I would like to welcome everyone this evening, family and friends of Sister Jane Marie, and also those who are joining us around the country via Zoom. We will begin with a biography of Jane Marie. It's a little longer than usual, but because there was so much important material that we felt it needed to be included. And so Eleanor Craig and Kathleen Vandahar will be reading it for us.
Mary Jane Richardson was born to Catholic Kentuckians Roy Clinton Richardson and Elsie Margaret Kipps Richardson in Louisville, Kentucky, where she grew up in St. Benedict's Parish, the sixth child and only girl in a family with 8 brothers, one of whom died in childhood.
I had a mom and dad who never made me feel anything but wanted. Growing up with so many brothers, mercilessly teased, I knew they liked me.
Jane was taught from the beginning by Loretto sisters at St. Benedict's Elementary and Loretto High School, Louisville. She entered Loretto immediately after high school, receiving the habit and the name Sister Jane Marie on April the 25th, 1947. On her application to Loretto, Jane reported that she had 6 years of piano training, some voice lessons, and sang a little. During her first 6 years in the community, she taught grade school music, choral work, and private piano lessons, first at St. Philomena's in Denver, and then at Mount Carmel in St. Louis.
I received a telegram from Sister Agnes Marie Fitzgerald when I was transferred from my first to second mission. She knew it was hard, unexpected. Her sensitive gesture still shines in me.
While teaching in Denver and then in St. Louis, Jane worked on her undergraduate degree in music. Her 1956 senior recital at Webster College was a lengthy piano performance. Immediately after she earned her degree, Jane was sent to Louisville to teach at her alma mater, Loretto High School on Broadway. She was there for 2 years, during which she helped stage 2 operettas. During the summers and one winter, she did more study for a master's degree in musicology at the Eastman School of Music. Jane wrote the following piece in 2001 about her life and music.
Music has accompanied me since before I was born. Mother loved to sing and play the piano. One of her sisters often came over to visit, and she too was a fine player. Both of them had given piano lessons for a few years, and both had a wonderful ear for music. They could play just about anything you could hum. As long as I can remember, we had a piano in our home. My grandfather tuned and serviced pianos for many years. He was often called upon to do this for concert performers who came to Louisville. So music was in my genes. My own lessons began when I was about 12. My teacher was an older woman whom my mother knew from her father's work. Memory assures me that I rarely practiced as much as I should have, but I did enjoy playing things that were often not part of my lesson. In high school, we had annual operettas as well as music classes, and these experiences certainly helped me and gave much pleasure. Of course, when I entered the novitiate, we had regular choir practice for liturgy and seasonal practice for various occasions. I learned a lot from Sister Rose Vincent, and especially enjoyed the part singing and the recreational singing. Sometimes I was able to play the piano, but that was not very often. When it came time for a profession, therefore, I was startled to be asked if I would like to teach music. I had always thought I'd be teaching academic subjects. In fact, I felt a little disappointed, but not for long. I loved my 6 years of grade school music teaching, both private and classroom lessons. Many of the students and their parents were enthusiastic and that helped a lot. In the summers, I was able to finish my degree and begin graduate work at the Eastman School in Rochester, New York. What a challenge. The atmosphere there was permeated with music of all kinds and excellent performing. It was not just learning about techniques and appreciation and performing, but about finding my way around in the universe that is music itself. I owe Loretto so much for all of this. It was early in the 70s that I first began to write music, songs for meditation and liturgical use. This effort was prompted by the occasion of the celebration of Sister Mary Luke's 12 years as Superior General in 1970. Since then, up to 1997, I've written about 150 songs, most of them psalm settings. Although my work has never been published, it has been printed at home and spread around to many places, groups, and individuals. Audio tapes have also been shared. The nudge to compose is still with me. Songs and singing are part of my being.
January 1959 began with Jane teaching in St. Louis at Webster College and Marillac College. That fall, she was appointed Assistant Mistress of Postulants and moved to the Mother House. The next fall found Jane again studying for 2 years at Regina Mundi in Rome and for 1 year further at the Institut Catholique in Paris.
I can never be grateful enough for the theology study in Europe. My life got the disciplining and opening up it needed. My dad died in February 1962. I was studying in Rome and could not come home. Many sisters, I later learned, went to the funeral, aching comfort.
Jane returned to the Mother House in the fall of 1963 to serve a brief year as Mistress of Postulants.
This is the rest.
The next summer, she was elected to the General Council, serving, in her words, as Sister Luke's assistant. That same year, 1964, Jane accompanied Luke to Rome. She later wrote,
"We were already en route there when Luke recognized it as history in the making and wanted to be near. Our ship was off the coast of Western Africa when 2 cable calls came. The Associated Press in New York and Sister Helen Sanders in St. Louis both wanted to congratulate her on having been named that very day an official observer, the only American woman invited. Elation. I wanted champagne, but we had to settle for ice cream. Those were great growing days in the church."
When they returned from the Vatican Council in Rome, Jane had another new job. In addition to serving on Loretto's General Council, she was Director of Young Profess at the St. Louis House of Studies, a position she held for 4 years until the program was discontinued.
I had a lot of fun, at some cost. Working with new members during the 60s, they were fresh, foolish, fervent. I found these young women to be so wholesome and receptive so eager to find out what giving their lives to God meant. I don't feel bad that I could only give them hints and guesses about what it meant. They know now that the answer takes a lifetime.
Jane returned once again to the Mother House in 1968. As a member of the General Council, she was among those who met for a fateful working session, out of which came plans for a contemporary Loretto rule. Jane was assigned the task of crafting new guidelines, taking her material from the statements and aspirations of community members, working through several commissions for renewal. Sections on membership and government were added later, but Jane's original text has remained nearly the same, serving Loretto as I Am the Way for nearly 45 years.
I remember well Thomas Merton's upbeat response to the new guidelines. We did that first draft. I was holed up in a room at Highland Park, writing. As soon as Luke and I got back to Kentucky, we went to see Merton. We wanted his reaction and comments. He was so affirming, even of the very idea of trying to make the constitutions of a community much more positive and uplifting. In this case, much more expressive of a woman's experience and point of view. We were trying to capture some of that great spirit flowing from the council.
2 years later, Loretto's central administration changed. Helen Sanders was elected Loretto's first modern president, and Jane was free to pursue her lifelong desire to live a quiet life of prayer and contemplation on the Mother House grounds. Jane wrote reflections on this new lifestyle at various times, some when she celebrated her silver and golden jubilees. This first passage, however, is at the very beginning, 1970.
I have an ardent desire to share something of my new life with you. If you haven't been to Loretto Mother House lately, you will have a hard time imagining what transformation has taken place in the last 2 rooms on the ground floor of the novitiate building. In early June, a number of remarkable friends began a noble effort to scrape, repair, and to paint. By the end of August, an apartment beyond price awaited its new tenant, me. All I had to do was start praying, with no excuse left after 20 years of looking forward. I moved into the new quarters on August 31st. Up to now, what impresses me about this new style? Probably its ordinariness. In June 1972, the small white frame building, long known as the Cabins, but in recent years used as a storage and catch-all place, was moved down to the valley below the cemetery to be transformed into a simple and suitable house of prayer for me, Sister Jane Marie Richardson. The renovation of this somewhat unlikely structure into a congenial house of song and silence occupied the time and talent of 2 local carpenters during most of the summer of 1972. On September 14th, the Feast of the Exaltation of the Cross, I, Jane, moved into this new hermitage. My first night there was thus the Feast of the Seven Sorrows of Our Lady. The house was named Kotoba, a Japanese phrase meaning a place where the word flowers, expressing the hope for fruitful contemplation. What can I say about starting Cedars of Peace? It happened so simply, so quietly, no big deal. My previous 6 years of living a contemplative lifestyle, undertaken with the firm and gentle guidance of Sister Mary Luke Tobin, seemed to lead naturally to building a few little cabins where others could also enjoy some quiet and solitude. Helen Sanders, my high school principal, and another stalwart friend, with her executive committee, were amazingly open to the idea and the need. Many sisters helped, giving good advice, physical energy, and time. It is almost unbelievable how simply it all came to be.
Jane's quiet lifestyle encompassed great concern for the affairs and sufferings of those near and far. She was a participant in protests against the School of the Americas at Fort Benning, Georgia. And in 1984, she traveled with a group of 32 Loreto and other women to El Salvador to support the madres of the disappeared and to witness to the tragedy of the brutal murder of 4 U.S. missionaries. She wrote at length about this trip in a profound yet factual way.
Friday, November 30th, 1984. Last night, the whole group at Cedars prayed beautifully, faithfully in a little send-off we feel for the land, the people, the suffering, the hopes. I go to put my arms around a few of the madres and the children. I want to look into the eyes of people who are so unlike me in many ways, and yet who have as much right to live as I have and as much desire. I go south because you call me. I do not like to go public, and this trip is costing me something in that regard. I lack experience and political savvy, and am not drawn to press conferences, marches, demonstrations. I abhor the U.S. policies in Central America, our systematic support of dictatorships, and I need to say no with my body. At the same time, I go to pray. That's why we were asked to come. if I find myself with women who are very politically astute and active, I will just try to learn what I can, but also to preserve whatever inner freedom I can. Freedom to follow my heart and mind. Whatever happens, I'd go to be with the poor because I need to, and I trust that this trip will speak to that need. Saturday, December 1. Marge Tuitt really scared us last night at the briefing session. She said, "Keep a low profile. We go to a country at war. Talk about nothing but the weather or scenery when outside. It's dangerous. They know our sympathies are with the guerrillas." And then we prayed for the ability to bear the burden of knowing, which we were about to take up. Sunday, December 2nd, the anniversary of the deaths of Ita, Dorothy, Mara, and Jean. No one spoke as we approached the spot where the 4 women had been raped, shot, and abandoned. Our bus pulled over to the side of the road, and we climbed out and over the fence to the open field. Standing in the ditch where the bodies of the women had been hastily buried by the local peasants, I felt almost numb, without thought or feeling. Then, as the litany of prayers and songs began, there came the realization that I was on holy ground, that something indescribably terrible had happened here, a struggle whose effects were being felt all over El Salvador, Central America, and our own land to the north. For a few moments, the last 4 years did not exist. We were fully engaged in life and death, our own, everyone's.
In 1990, Jane left Cedars and moved to Louisville to provide care and companionship for her very good friend, Mary Schaldenbrand, as Mary began her long struggle with advanced Alzheimer's disease. In 1994, Mary began living at St. Joseph Infirmary at Loretto Mother House. Jane said of her,
"Mary is the sister God gave me in my 30s. The gift of her friendship remains to this day a profound and transforming grace in my life."
Jane continued to live and work in Louisville until late 2013. She served on the Loretto staff as resource person for spirituality. She offered spiritual direction, wrote articles, did retreat work. She was an occasional volunteer at a nearby community center. She belonged to a Merton study and prayer group, 3 women's groups, a peer supervisors group, and the Archdiocese of Louisville Board of Ecumenism. Gradually, Jane's friends and family noticed worrisome changes and urged her to move to the Mother House where she would be safe. She resisted. In the end, the move was made without her full support. Many visited her in the infirmary, from near and far, to remember and to thank her for her music, her guidance, her prayer, her contributions to our guidelines, I Am the Way. In Jane's brief final sickness, she was safe and surrounded by people who knew and cherished her. Jane wrote a kind of summary of her life at the time of her Golden Jubilee.
Like any life journey, my own has been full of both the ordinary and the unexpected, the usual and the surprising. Some of the surprises. When I thought I would major in philosophy, music became my major. When I thought I would never see mountains, Denver became my first mission. When ocean travel would never have crossed my mind, I was sent to Rome for study. When I was ready to teach, I was asked to work in the novitiate. When I thought I might serve in a new government structure, I moved into solitude. Religious obedience has been an adventure, sometimes easy, sometimes not. I tend to see my life now as a journey toward greater freedom, the freedom to be and to do what I really believe in. I think Thomas Merton is right when he says that the most important question in life is not, are you happy, but are you free?
In response to the reading, we will have some readings from I Am the Way by Catherine Ann Hines, one of her classmates, and Vicki Schwartz, a longtime friend.
Our life in community in the present time empowers us for mission and is itself an expression of mission. Rejoicing in and strengthened by our mutual love, we go forth to meet our farther neighbors in their human needs and aspirations. We seek to teach out beyond boundaries imposed by any differences that tend to separate us.
The Spirit of God is not bound. It reveals itself in the lives of everyone. Even as we give to others, we acknowledge our need to learn from those to whom we are sent.
Our faith, our dedication, our community life, our mission, all are meant to constitute a single gift of praise and thanksgiving to the one who freely loves us all.
Quietly, daily, sometimes together, sometimes alone, we turn to God, praying as the Spirit moves our hearts and lives.
Oh, beauty, ever ancient, ever new, too little, and too late have I loved you. You were within me, but I was outside, and it was there that I searched for you. In my unloveliness, I plunged into the lovely things you made. You were with me, but I was not with you. You called, you shouted, you broke through my deafness. You flashed, you shone, my eyes were opened. You breathed your fragrance upon me. I drew in breath, and now I pant for you. Wisdom, everlasting, ever true. You drew me by the light that was you. But then I trembled, my vision faltered. You kindly spoke, but I was far away. I heard your voice on high, inviting me to feast on heavenly food. I would be changed into the one I love. Oh yes, you drew me, but I was not ready. I heard you speak as from a distance, but then you showed me the way. Embracing him, I found my love. Oh, beauty, ever ancient, ever new. Too little, and too late have I loved you. You were within me, but I was outside, and it was there that I searched for you. In my unloveliness, in you. At this time, if anyone would like to begin the sharing, you don't stand too close to the microphone. It works pretty well. And Peg reminds me that you should look at the camera.
My name's Glenn Richardson. I'm Jane's nephew. Being here at Loretta, louder, sorry, brings back many memories. We she was here many a summer Richardson reunion or family gathering on the grounds, and of course we all remembered, this place and were drawn to it, and Jane was just so much of a part of here, and it makes us, I think, feel so much a part of you and a part of here. I didn't plan to get up here, but I felt like I couldn't not say something. I remember when I first got back from overseas, and that would have been 1970. Jane was always never about Jane. She was always about everybody else and what was going on in your life and everything. And of course, we just loved her music. But she was more. She was more about getting into. I played guitar, so she wanted to play guitar too. She had I think it was a classical guitar. And though I knew how gifted she was on the piano, she loved playing the folk songs on the guitar, and so we would sing. She was a beautiful lady.
I don't think I'm going to cry anymore. I've lost the water in my eyes. But she was almost like a sister, because we lived one block from from her mother, who I call Mom, my mother. And she was just so dear. We loved each other so. Here I am going to cry. But anyway, she was just an inspiration to the whole family, although we didn't see her at those early years. But just at the last, it would seem like it was just me and Thelma Elder, her friend that went to, that was in school with her, I think. But it was a good friend of hers, Thelma Elder. She's coming tomorrow. And she and I would take Jane out for lunch quite often. And but she was just so pleasant to be around. You know, she just, and it seemed like life was just so beautiful to her. And everything that we, her family, did, she was just into it. I mean, she was so happy for all of us when anything happened. Just like her mother, when her mother was dying, my boys, the one that just talked and the older one, was going in business in '86. That's about the time her mother was dying. They went up to the hospital to see Grandma, and she was so, just like Jane, just so happy that they were going in business. So, but you know, this is not what it's supposed to be. This is where we try and get to that good old place. So everybody has trials and tribulations, and they just gotta work them out and try and settle things as easily with passion and you know, just know that we're here for a short time. So, and my time's about up, I think, too, but that's all right. I just try to be a good person. Say, love those enemies, and that's what I'm doing. There's not too many either. Oh, I'm Biddy, her sister-in-law, Agnes Richardson. But anyway, she was very dear to me and close to me, and like she was to Jane Feller. Yes.
Vicki Schwartz. The first time I met Jane Marie, I was in 8th grade at Our Lady of Mount Carmel, as was my friend Jeannie Hummel Hannabrink over there. And Jane came to teach Ward, and there was an immediate connection between us. But my deeper connection with Jane really came forward during high school years, when Jeannie, who had taken piano lessons from her, decided, you know, we need to go see Jane down there at Loretto Academy because they're putting on this, I believe it was student print. So we came down, and as those high school years went on, I became closer and closer to Jane, and in many ways she became one of my mothers, and I will always be grateful for her for that. The day I entered Loretto, she gave me this medal that I'm wearing today. It's a Sacred Heart, and how fitting, because how much Jane was about heart and about love. During the time I was in the novitiate, I was a novice, and Jane was dealing with postulants, and we had a little falling out. Well, we had a falling out that lasted 20 years. Then my friend Jeannie over there, she says to me one day, you know, we need to go see Jane down there at Cedars. And I thought, how am I going to do this? Because we could always be pleasant, but we never really talked about the elephant in the room. So I decided before I could go down there, come here with Jeannie, I had to talk with Jane. And so I came here, and we cried together. And all of that, whatever happened, kind of floated away in those tears. And I will always be grateful for that. And again, when I think of Jane, I think about love.
I'm Mary Lee Murphy, Sister Mary Lee Murphy. When we were in the novitiate, holler if you can hear me. When we were in the novitiate and going into receive the habit, the older sisters were appointed to take care of those of us who were going to be received. And I was so fortunate because Jane was assigned as my big sister. And I love that very much And Jane loved that very much because she always said to me, Mary Lee, it means so much to me to have a little sister because I never had a sister. Thank you.
I'm Alice Steinenberry, and can you hear me louder? I'm Alice Steinenberry, and I was one of the 36 postulants that Jane had in 1963. She always says there were 37, but one didn't make it through the night. She went home before morning, so Jane used to tell that story. She said, I couldn't keep you all together even for one night. But I was privileged. I was only here for 2 years, except Jane allowed me to be part of Loretto for 50 years. And in a real sense, that's true. Most people don't know me. That's okay. But Jane knew that. And for 50 years, we never, ever missed a season. They were our seasons. They were mostly quiet. But there wasn't one part of her life or mine that we didn't share over the course of those 50 years. She rocked my babies in Cordoba. I have pictures, and some in Cedars. And the kids used to play with the cats here and drive most of the sisters crazy because they would run around the grounds. And they were glad when we went home, but Jane wasn't glad when we went home. I have been truly blessed. I wanted her to sing at my wedding, but in '68, that was not the going style. So her nephew got that one a few years later. But my daughter was married in 2003, and she sang at Molly's wedding for me. One of the many, many things Jane did. Mostly, I have tucked in a box. I always wanted her to sing on tape because I couldn't come often enough to hear her. So on a little cassette tape, she always said it was the first tape she recorded. I have it in a little shoebox in my garage, and I won't ever part with it. It still plays. So I'm very fortunate for the love and the years that Jane and I shared together. I don't think anyone can really understand when you're away what it means to be able to be apart. And Jane made that gap close for me. She loved me in a way. When I've been very sick lately, I have cancer. And so the last time I was in Louisville to see her was the Saturday before she came to Loretto on Monday. And in the car, she said, let's just pray the Memorare together. Beautiful and simplistic, ever true, ever true. My daughter's first baby was not able to live, but we baptized her and named her Mary Jane. So the connections are very, very deep all through the years. I just have to tell you one last thing. Jane, when she was in the Holy Land at one time, brought back a cross made out of olive wood. And one of the sisters at Eric's Hall actually gave it to me the day I joined the order. And I kept it until one day I was talking to Jane and I laid it on her desk and she said, where'd you get that? Like, how did you steal that from somebody? Because she knew who she had given it to. And I said, I've had it for a while, but it was broken. And she said, oh, it is. She said, let's glue it. And then she said, no, let's not. Let's not. She said, it's easier to carry in pieces. And I still have one small piece left. She had a piece, and the piece I had, I've cut off through the years and given it to treasured friends in my life. And when I was here in October, she held it then, and she said, it's still easier to carry in pieces. So for all the joy that Jane has brought to my world, to my children. My children are truly remarkable people because of Jane. They all know her. They're sorry they can't be here. They are distraught. They wanted to send flowers. They didn't know what to do. They're just lost. The grandchildren know Jane. But for the blessings that will live on in places that you have no idea, in ways that a love that gave birth to love every day. God bless all of you. In a way, I guess, for me, losing Jane is also like losing Loretto. And I guess that's the harder part for me. I know coming today, tomorrow, will probably be the last time I ever visit. So it's a part of my life that maybe I'm just not ready to give up, because she kept it alive for me all these years. The commitment to Loretto that no one knew I even had. I love you, Jane. Thank you so much for listening.
My name is Susan Clausen, and I'm the current director of Cedars of Peace. And while I have not known Jane Marie for the same length of time, or really as well as many of you here, I know a piece of her heart. And I feel like the years I've been the director of Cedars that I've been entrusted with a vision and have constantly asked myself, what is the core of that vision that she held, and what does it mean for today? So I've been very intentional about that. And I think the autobiography expressed it so well, that sense that she carried, that silence and contemplation is relevant in the world today. And that is alive and well at Cedars. And I wanted to honor her in some way tonight. And I decided to read the poem that Cecily Jones wrote for the 25th anniversary of Cedars of Peace. It was in 2001, and it was at the time when we were all wondering when the U.S. was going to bomb Afghanistan. The title of the poem is When That Day Comes, Cedars of Peace, 1976 to 2001. And it begins with a line from a memo from Colorado Campaign for Middle East Peace. If the U.S. begins bombing, meet at 5:30 the same day on the west steps of the state capitol, Colfax and Broadway. When the day comes, may our hearts meet here at Compline, where the pleading chant layered through the years will comfort us. As we huddle in our towns to mourn, may our hearts meet here in the silence of these woods, where hope will temper dread. 7,000 times or so before, you have gathered in the dusk to pray. We shall scan a frightful sky when that day comes, but may our hearts meet here. When that day comes, the smothered moaning of the dove and sudden scramble of two acrobatic squirrels may be the loudest sounds to counterpoint your prayer. We must gather with our somber signs and urgent chants when that day comes. As our hearts meet here at Compline, we scavenge for a whispered peace against the screams that vengeance shrieks. Afghanistan, the Atlas says, holds stands of cypress, juniper, and pine. Are they the cedar's kin? And will they offer peace, we ask, when that day comes? May our hearts meet here.
I happened to, to be present here when Jane was proposing these little huts in the woods to the executive committee. And I remember thinking, that sounds pretty vague to me. But luckily, the executive committee knew more than I did about Jane and knew that something would come of that and gave her the permission to go ahead and start Cedars of Peace. Another remembrance I have was here in this church, and I happened to be here when Jane was singing. Ann White, who recently died, and Pat Canoyer were dancing, a liturgical dance. And I remembered thinking, what a great way to grow old gracefully, because the three of them were getting close to 80 if they weren't already there.
I hope I get through this. I hope I get through this. Again? Oh, Jane Feller. I'm Jane's friend, along with everyone else. The one thing that I want to share with you, I hope, first of all, it has been my most esteemed privilege to be Jane's friend all these years. I cannot tell you. One of the things that has impressed me about Jane all these years, and I share it with you, and that is I don't ever remember Jane saying one unkind, unloving word about another person. Never. If I made a comment, she would change it around to a positive. Always kind and loving. And I hope that I too can learn to be that way. It's so impressive to me. And Jane, as I said, every day I was with her, never anything unkind or unloving about another person. I could never understand how it was so easy for her to be that way always, and always so loving. I will cherish our relationship forever. And thank you to Loretto, too, for welcoming me and allowing me to express this to you, because I think it's something you all need to know also. And we will miss Jane terribly. There's just no question about it. But she's in our hearts always and forever. And thank you for indulging me.
Anyone else before I turn it over to Denver? I just want to say before we go to Denver that Mary McAuliffe, who is in the hospital having had heart surgery just recently, is online and wanting to be a part of this. You can't get a good woman down. Denver, we'll turn it over to you now.
St. Louis, is there anyone there who would like to speak?
No.
Okay. Does anyone else would they like to say anything? Anyone else viewing? If you do, just unmute yourself.
I'm Ann Spillane from St. Louis, and I was a classmate of Jane's during that famous class of 36 people, who was the largest class to ever enter the community. And I remember they used to say we could be the ruination of the place, but I think we turned out okay. But Jane felt to me always like a finished product. I mean, like, she was very self-contained, but so sure of herself, and had a great, marvelous sense of humor. I used to love to laugh with her. So that's it for me.
Would anyone else like to speak? If so, just unmute yourself and start talking.
This is Mary Ann McGivern from St. Louis. Some of you know Aggie Horman, a religious of the Sacred Heart. She was I worked with her here in St. Louis, and then she worked in Rome. Then she worked in Rome, and then she came back and took a sabbatical at Cedars, and then became the director of Cedars and has had a role in Loretto. So I asked her, why did you come to Cedars from Rome? How did you even know about it? And she said that two different people had recommended it to her, and one of them had said, there's no funny business there. And it's a funny phrase, but it is the truth. And I think about it sometimes. I think about Jane's legacy that way, that Cedars, I am the way, the music, her presence, the gifts she's given us. It's straightforward, it's simple, there's no funny business. It was just a great gift of spirituality that has formed us all.
All right. Anyone else like to speak? If so, just unmute yourself and start talking. Okay, Mother House, back to you.
Thank you all for being here, and we'll close with My Soul Give Thanks. My soul